Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always excited to dive in.
Today, we're tackling a topic that I think is fascinating to just about anyone. Innovation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those moments like, aha, why didn't I think of that before?
Yeah.
Or those incredible inventions or ideas that just seem to change everything.
Right.
So where do those ideas come from? Are they just random? Or is there some kind of pattern to innovation?
Well, that's a great question. It's something people have been trying to figure out for a long time.
Well, luckily, we've got a fantastic guide to help us explore this. Stephen Johnson's book, Where Good Ideas Come From.
Oh, that's a great one.
It's packed with fascinating insights into how innovation really works.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about some lone genius having a sudden epiphany.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's much more about the environment, the patterns that make those breakthroughs more likely.
Right. So it's kind of like that saying, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But where does that 1% come from? And can we actually create the conditions for more of those
Yeah.
aha moments?
Those are the key questions.
And Johnson offers some really interesting answers.
Yeah.
One of the core concepts he explores is this idea of the adjacent possible.
Ah, yes.
I gotta say, when I first heard that term, it sounded a bit like something out of science fiction.
It does sound a little futuristic, doesn't it?
So break it down for us. What exactly is the adjacent possible?
So imagine all the possibilities, all the potential ideas and inventions that exist just beyond what we currently know or can do.
Okay, I'm starting to picture it.
The adjacent possible is that space right there. It's not about some radical leap forward, but building on what already exists.
So combining familiar things in new ways.
Exactly, like that. And Johnson uses a really interesting example to illustrate this, the infant incubator.
Oh, wow.
You know, back in the late 1800s, an obstetrician in Paris was trying to figure out how to reduce infant mortality rates.
Yeah, that was a huge problem then, and unfortunately still is in some parts of the world.
Absolutely.
So what did this doctor discover?
Well, he found inspiration in a pretty unexpected place, the Paris Zoo.
The zoo.
Yeah. He saw how they were using incubators to keep newborn chicks warm and healthy.
So he got the idea for a life-saving medical device from a chicken incubator.
It's amazing, right?
That's incredible.
He recognized the potential for what Johnson calls exaptation, taking something designed for one purpose and applying it to something completely different.
Wow.
And that observation revolutionized neonatal care.
It makes you realize that solutions can come from the most unexpected places.
Mm-hmm.
What we might see as ordinary or mundane could actually hold the key to some groundbreaking innovation.
It's all about perspective.
Exactly. It's about looking at things with fresh eyes.
And speaking of fresh perspectives, Johnson talks about another really interesting example of the adjacent possible, the Neo-Nurture Incubator.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Mhm.
Isn't it designed for developing countries?
Yes. And what's fascinating is that it's made primarily from car parts.
Car parts. Seriously.
Ah.
That is amazing. Talk about resourcefulness.
Right. But it also highlights that innovation isn't always about having the most high-tech, cutting-edge technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's about looking at what you already have available and using it in a clever way.
So being creative within your adjacent possible.
Exactly.
So how do we apply this to our own lives?
Mm.
I mean, we're not all doctors or inventors, but how can we create an environment where we can spot these adjacent possibilities all around us?
It starts with being open to those possibilities. Don't just focus on those big breakthroughs. It's those small, seemingly insignificant details that can spark something amazing.
It's like training yourself to look for those unexpected connections. Right?
Mm-hmm. It's about fostering that curiosity and exploring those connections.
Creating a culture where people are encouraged to connect the dots in new and innovative ways.
Exactly.
So that's the adjacent possible.
Uh-huh.
But Johnson talks about another key ingredient for innovation. Liquid networks. Okay, now that sounds intriguing. Liquid networks.
It is.
Tell us more.
Well, think about it this way. Imagine a solid, right? The molecules are fixed in place. Information flow is slow, predictable.
Okay, I see where you're going to this.
But in a liquid, the molecules are moving around freely, interacting with each other, constantly forming new connections.
Sounds more dynamic.
Exactly. It's adaptable, fluid, ideal for the flow of ideas.
So are you saying that we need to ditch those rigid structures and embrace more flexible, fluid environments?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I like it.
And it's not just some abstract theory either. Think about the human brain. It operates as a liquid network, with neurons constantly forging new pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most potent examples of a liquid network throughout history has been the city.
Oh, cities. The hubs of creativity and innovation.
Exactly. Think about it. Early cities were dense. People from all walks of life were crammed together, interacting in marketplaces, coffee houses.
So that density and interaction just fueled this incredible explosion of innovation.
It was like a giant melting pot of ideas, constantly bubbling and brewing.
I love that image. But how do we translate that to our lives today? We might not all live in bustling metropolises, but how can we create those liquid conditions in our own work, our personal lives?
It could be something as simple as changing your office layout
Oh, interesting.
to encourage spontaneous conversations,
Okay.
or joining a group with people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives, or even something as simple as taking a different route to work to break out of your routine.
I love those suggestions. It's about creating opportunities for those serendipitous encounters, those unexpected collisions of ideas.
Exactly. And Johnson makes this really interesting comparison between browsing a physical newspaper and exploring the web.
Oh, right. I remember that part.
Yeah.
So what was your takeaway from that?
Well, he acknowledges that we have access to an abundance of information online, but he highlights the potential downsides of what he calls filter bubbles.
Ah, yes, the filter bubbles, those algorithms that show us only what they think we want to see.
Exactly. It's like being trapped in an echo chamber of our own preferences.
Right.
And he points out that while online filters can limit our exposure to accidental discoveries, serendipitous encounters are still more likely on the open web than when you're browsing a physical newspaper.
Yeah, that makes sense. With a newspaper, you're limited to what's on that page, that section.
Yeah.
But with the web, you can jump from topic to topic, making those unexpected connections.
Right. So it's about finding that balance between curated information and exploration, leaving room for those happy accidents that can lead to new ideas.
That's such a crucial point. It's so easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles.
Yeah.
But those unexpected connections, those things that challenge our thinking, are often where the most groundbreaking ideas come from.
Absolutely. And you know what? That reminds me of another important concept that Johnson explores: the slow hunch.
The slow hunch, what's that all about?
It's the idea that those aha moments, those big breakthroughs, rarely appear overnight. They often take time to develop, like a seed that's slowly germinating underground. Johnson uses a great anecdote to illustrate this. He talks about Darwin's theory of evolution.
Of course. Darwin spent years and years cultivating his hunches, collecting observations, connecting the dots, before the full picture of evolution emerged.
Yeah,
It wasn't just some sudden flash of insight.
exactly. And he even kept a notebook specifically for capturing his fleeting thoughts and observations.
Wow, a hunch notebook. I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder how many of our own slow hunches are just floating around out there, waiting for the right conditions to blossom into something truly significant.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think, maybe we should all have a system for capturing those random thoughts.
That's a great idea.
It's those little hunches that pop into our heads.
Yeah, and Johnson talks about that too, having systems for nurturing those hunches.
Okay.
Whether it's a physical notebook or some digital tool, the key is to have that dedicated space to collect and cultivate them.
It's like planting a seed and giving it the time, the space, and the right conditions to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those big ideas need that incubation period.
Exactly. Johnson actually uses a pretty sobering example to illustrate this. He talks about the FBI's failure to connect the dots before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
They had pieces of the puzzle, but their closed information networks, the lack of communication and collaboration, stifled the flow of crucial insights.
Right, they had the information, but it wasn't being shared and analyzed in a way that could have led to action.
Exactly.
It's a powerful reminder that innovation isn't just about generating those brilliant ideas. It's about creating an environment where they can be shared, challenged, and ultimately put into action.
You've got it. It's about creating a system that allows those slow hunches to emerge and develop into something meaningful.
So we've talked about the adjacent possible, liquid networks, slow hunches. We've explored how seemingly unrelated things can spark innovation. But there's another aspect that I think people often shy away from, and that's the role of error. Error, isn't that something we usually try to avoid?
It is, but Johnson makes a really compelling argument for reframing our perception of error. He says mistakes are an inevitable part of the creative process, and often they can be really valuable stepping stones on the path to innovation.
So we shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes.
Not at all. Think about it. I'm sure you've had those aha moments that came about because you made a mistake.
Oh, absolutely. I can think of a bunch of times when I messed something up and it actually led to a much better solution.
Exactly. I had an experience just the other day. I was working on a research project and I accidentally inputted the wrong data set.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was frustrated at first, but then I realized that the error actually revealed a new and totally unexpected correlation.
So a mistake led to a new discovery.
It did, and it opened up a whole new avenue of investigation.
Wow, that's incredible. It just goes to show that sometimes the best discoveries happen when we least expect them.
Mm-hmm. And Johnson shares a ton of stories just like that. Like the story of Lee DeForest, considered the father of radio. He essentially stumbled upon the invention of the vacuum tube by accident.
Wasn't it something about adding an extra electrode to his device while he was experimenting with wireless telegraphy?
That's right. A simple mistake that transformed the field of electronics.
Amazing. It really highlights how those unexpected twists and turns can lead to breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm. And it underscores that we shouldn't fear those mistakes. They're opportunities for learning and can be springboards for new discoveries.
It's like the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When things go wrong, we're forced to adapt and come up with new solutions.
I love that. And often those solutions are even better than what we originally planned.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that innovation is often a messy, unpredictable process.
It really is. And you know what? It reminds me of another concept Johnson talks about, exaptation.
Exaptation. Now, what's that all about?
Well, it's essentially repurposing.
Repurposing.
Yeah. Taking something that was created for one purpose and finding a completely different use for it.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this connects to innovation.
Mm-hmm.
But give us some examples to bring this to life.
Okay, so a classic example is Gutenberg's printing press.
Ah, Gutenberg, the father of the printing press.
Exactly. But, you know, it wasn't built entirely from scratch. Gutenberg was really clever. He took existing technologies like the screw press that was used for winemaking and combined them in a new way to create something revolutionary.
So even something as groundbreaking as the printing press has its roots in earlier inventions.
Exactly. It's a great example of seeing the potential in existing tools and technologies, even if they seem totally unrelated at first glance.
It's about connecting the dots in a new way.
Yes. And another fascinating example is the repurposing of punch cards. They were originally used in the jacquard loom for weaving intricate patterns.
Oh, right. I remember learning about those.
Yeah.
But how does that connect to innovation?
Well, decades later, those same punched cards were adapted for use in Charles Babbage's analytical engine, which is considered a precursor to the modern computer.
So an innovation in weaving helped pave the way for the digital age. That's wild. It really highlights how seemingly disparate fields can influence each other in unexpected ways.
It really does. And it underscores the importance of cross-disciplinary thinking. Exaptation thrives in environments where ideas from different fields can collide and recombine.
So we've talked about the adjacent possible, liquid networks, slow hunches, serendipity, embracing error, and now exaptation. It's like a whole toolkit for sparking innovation.
It is, but Johnson adds one more powerful tool to that toolkit. Platforms.
Platforms? You mean like social media platforms?
Well, those are a modern example, but the concept goes way beyond that.
Okay.
Think of a platform as a foundation for further innovation.
Okay, give us a concrete example to help us grasp this.
Okay, so let's start with a natural example, the coral reef.
The coral reef.
Yeah. It's built by these tiny organisms, but it creates this incredible platform for a vast, diverse ecosystem to thrive.
So the coral itself provides the foundation for countless other forms of life to evolve and flourish.
Exactly. And that same principle applies to technological innovation. Take GPS technology, for example.
Okay.
It was originally developed for tracking Sputnik.
Sputnik, the first satellite launched into space.
That's right. But over time, GPS evolved into this amazing platform that enables everything from mapping software to mobile navigation.
So from tracking a satellite to helping us navigate our daily commutes, that's quite a journey.
It is. And the digital world is full of these platform-based innovations. Think about the internet itself, or operating systems like iOS and Android. They've created this infrastructure for an explosion of creativity and new applications.
It's fascinating to think about how these platforms have created entire ecosystems of innovation.
Right.
But how can we, as individuals, apply this concept in our own lives?
That's a great question.
It seems a little daunting.
Yeah, well, it starts with recognizing the existing platforms in your own field. What are the foundations that others have already laid? How can you build on those structures, leverage the work that's already been done? It's like standing on the shoulders of giants.
I love that analogy. It really highlights the collaborative nature of innovation. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We can build upon the work of others to reach new heights.
Exactly. And, that brings us to a crucial point. Innovation isn't some rigid formula, it's a mindset. Once you understand these principles, these patterns, you can apply them creatively to any situation.
It's about being observant, curious, and open to new possibilities. It's about cultivating those habits of mind that allow us to see those connections where others might not.
Exactly. And remember, innovation isn't just for inventors and scientists.
It's for everyone.
It is.
Yeah.
Whether you're a teacher, an artist, an entrepreneur, a student, these patterns can help you generate new ideas, solve problems, and make a positive impact.
I love that. So to recap, we've explored some of the key patterns of innovation from Steven Johnson's book. The adjacent possible, liquid networks, slow hunches, the role of serendipity, embracing error, exaptation, and platforms. It's been a fascinating journey so far, and I'm excited to continue this deep dive with you.
Me too.
But for now, we'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Think about what you've learned today. What are those seemingly unrelated ideas or experiences that are floating around in your own adjacent possible? What connections might you be missing? Because you never know, your next breakthrough could be just around the corner.
It could be. Exactly. It's about connecting the dots in a new way.
So we've talked about the adjacent possible, liquid networks, slow hunches. We've talked about serendipity, embracing errors, and now exaptation.
Yeah.
It's like we're building this whole toolkit for sparking innovation.
It is. And you know what? Johnson actually adds one more really powerful tool to that toolkit, platforms.
Platforms,
So
like social media platforms.
Well, those are definitely a modern example of platforms. Okay. But the concept is much broader than that.
Okay, so help us understand this.
Think of a platform as a foundation for further innovation.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it, but can you give us a concrete example?
Sure. Let's start with a natural example, the coral reef.
The coral reef.
Yeah. It's built by these tiny little organisms, but it creates this incredible platform for a vast and diverse ecosystem to thrive.
So the coral itself is like the foundation, and then all these other forms of life can evolve and flourish on top of that.
Exactly. And that same principle applies to technological innovation. Take GPS technology, for example.
Right.
It was originally developed for tracking Sputnik.
Sputnik, the first satellite launched into space.
That's the one. But over time, GPS evolved into this incredible platform that enables everything from mapping software to mobile navigation.
So from tracking a satellite to helping us navigate our daily commutes. Talk about a transformation.
It's remarkable. And, the digital world is full of these platform-based innovations.
Like what?
Well, think about the internet itself or operating systems like iOS and Android.
Right.
They've created this infrastructure for just this explosion of creativity and new applications.
It's amazing to think about how these platforms have spawned entire ecosystems of innovation.
It is.
But how can we, as individuals, apply this concept of platforms in our own lives?
That's a great question. I think it starts with recognizing the existing platforms in your field.
Okay.
What are the foundations that others have already laid? How can you build upon those structures, leverage the work that's already been done? It's like standing on the shoulders of giants.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really highlights that innovation is often a collaborative process.
Exactly. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
You can build on what others have done to reach new heights.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really crucial point. Innovation isn't some rigid formula. It's a mindset. Once you understand these principles, you can apply them creatively to any situation.
So it's about being observant, curious,
Yeah.
and open to new possibilities.
Absolutely.
It's about cultivating those habits of mind that allow us to see the connections that others might miss.
Exactly. And remember, innovation isn't just for inventors and scientists. It's for everyone. Teachers, artists, entrepreneurs, students.
For anyone who wants to bring new ideas to life.
Absolutely. Whether you're trying to generate new ideas or solve problems, these patterns can help you make a positive impact.
I love that. So to recap,
Yeah.
we've explored some of the key patterns of innovation from Steven Johnson's book. The adjacent possible, liquid networks, slow hunches, the role of serendipity, embracing error, exaptation, and platforms.
Quite a list.
It is, and it's been a truly fascinating journey so far. I'm excited to continue this exploration with you.
Me too.
But for now, we'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Think about what you've learned today. What are those seemingly unrelated ideas or experiences that are floating around in your own adjacent possible? What connections might you be missing? Because you never know. Your next breakthrough could be just around the corner.
It could be. It could be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into innovation, let's bring it back to our listeners.
Okay.
Knowing what we now know about these patterns from Steven Johnson, how can we actually use this knowledge to invite more innovative thinking into our own lives?
Well, I think the first step is really just cultivating that mindset, that awareness of the patterns.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to the world around you.
So being more observant.
Yeah. Looking for those chance encounters, those unexpected connections.
So basically looking for the adjacent possible in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Once you start looking for them, those patterns really are everywhere.
They are.
It's like a whole new way of seeing the world.
It is. And remember those slow hunches we talked about? Don't dismiss those seemingly random thoughts or ideas.
Right.
Capture them, give them space to simmer.
Okay.
You never know what might emerge.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
Right.
To play with those ideas, even if it means making a few mistakes along the way.
Exactly. Those mistakes can be so valuable.
They can be real learning opportunities. And what about platforms?
Yes, platform.
How can we use that concept in our daily lives?
So think about the existing platforms in your own field.
Okay.
What are the foundations that other people have already laid? How can you build on those, leverage that existing work to create something new and innovative?
It's like we've been given this amazing toolkit for innovation.
We have. And like any toolkit, you don't necessarily need every tool for every project.
Right.
But just having that awareness, knowing what's possible, can really open up your thinking.
So it's not about following a rigid formula, but more about understanding those underlying principles and then applying them in a way that works for you.
Exactly.
And remember, innovation isn't just for inventors and scientists.
No, it's not.
It's for teachers, artists, entrepreneurs, students.
Anyone who's looking to bring new ideas into the world.
I love that. It's about tapping into that creative potential that we all have within us and creating an environment where innovation can flourish.
That's what it's all about.
Well, this has been such a fascinating deep dive into the world of innovation.
It has.
I want to give a huge thanks to Steven Johnson for writing Where Good Ideas Come From.
It's a great book.
For shedding light on those hidden patterns. And reminding us that good ideas don't just happen by magic. They come from understanding those environments, those patterns that we can cultivate.
Right. It's a process.
It is.
And it's a process that we can all participate in.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, we'll leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
What are those seemingly unrelated ideas, those experiences that are floating around in your own adjacent possible? What connections might you be missing? Start paying attention, and you never know, your next breakthrough could be just around the corner.
It really could be.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.